What happens when a room full of wealthy people hosting a charity for disadvantaged youth actually meets a disadvantaged child? A 12-year-old girl asked to play piano for food at an exclusive gala. The guest's response was caught on hidden cameras. Their cruelty went viral. But the truth about who this girl really was? That's the part that made this one of the most watched documentaries of the year. Picture this. It's a beautiful evening in Chicago. Inside the Grand Plaza Hotel, crystal chandeliers are sparkling like diamonds above a crowd dressed in their finest clothes. Expensive perfume fills the air. Champagne glasses clink together as wealthy people laugh and chat about their lives, their businesses, their vacations in places most of us only dream about. This isn't just any party. This is a charity gala, a fundraiser to help disadvantaged youth get access to the arts. The irony of what's about to happen? Well, you'll see. Then, cutting through all that elegant conversation like a knife through silk, comes a voice. Small, shy, hesitant. May I play for food? Everyone stops talking. Heads turn. And there, standing at the entrance to the main ballroom, is a 12-year-old girl. Her name is Sandra Martinez. She's Latina, small for her age, wearing clothes that are a little too big for her, a little too worn. She's clutching a faded backpack to her chest, like it's the only thing protecting her from the world. And maybe it is. The reaction is immediate. Whispers start rippling through the crowd like poison spreading through water. How did she get in here? Where's security? Someone needs to remove her. This is completely inappropriate. A woman with platinum blonde hair, dripping in jewelry that probably costs more than most people make in a year, clutches her champagne glass tighter and turns to her friend. Can you believe this? She whispers, but loud enough for others to hear. These people have no shame. But Sandra doesn't move. She stands there, her eyes fixed on something across the room. A Steinway grand piano, gleaming black and beautiful beneath those crystal chandeliers. And the way she's looking at it, it's not the way someone looks at something they've never seen before. It's the way you look at an old friend you haven't seen in years. It's the look of recognition, of longing, of coming home. Now, let me tell you about Catherine Montgomery. She's 45 years old, the organizer of this event, and everything about her screams old money and high society. Designer dress, perfect makeup, that kind of confidence that comes from never being told no in your entire life. She's convinced of her own moral superiority. The kind of person who talks about helping the less fortunate while making sure they never actually have to interact with them. Catherine approaches Sandra with measured steps, a smile on her face that doesn't reach her eyes. "Darling," she says, her voice dripping with fake sweetness and real condescension. "This isn't the place for you. There's a fast food restaurant just down the street. Why don't you run along?" But Sandra doesn't run along. Something inside this 12-year-old girl, something that's been through more pain than most of these wealthy people will ever experience, makes her stand firm. "I just wanted to play," Sandra says, and her voice is gaining strength now. "Just one song, in exchange for a meal." The laughter starts. Cruel laughter. Dismissive laughter. The kind of laughter that comes from people who've never had to fight for anything in their lives. A man in an expensive navy suit shakes his head. She thinks she can play piano? She probably doesn't even know where Middle C is. Another woman adds, "It's adorable, really. These kids watch a movie and think they can do anything. So imaginative." But here's what they don't see. Here's what they're too blinded by their prejudice to notice. There's something about the way Sandra is standing. A quiet dignity. A confidence that seems completely out of place for a child in her situation. It's like she knows something they don't. Like she's carrying a secret that would shake their entire world if they only knew what it was. At the back of the ballroom, a man is watching all of this unfold. His name is Dr. Marcus Chun, And he's different from the others. He's a celebrated pianist, a judge at national competitions, someone who's spent 30 years evaluating musical talent. And his instincts are tingling. He notices something the others miss. The way Sandra is looking at that piano, that's not curiosity. That's not wonder. That's familiarity. That's love. Dr. Chen steps forward. "Catherine," he says carefully, "perhaps we should let her play. After all, isn't this event about supporting young talent?" Catherine laughs. "It sounds like breaking glass. Marcus, please. Look at her. Children like this don't have access to music education. It's simply impossible." But what Catherine doesn't know, what none of them know, is Sandra's story. And it's time you heard it too. 8 years ago, Sandra lived in a small house with her grandmother, Rosa Martinez. That house wasn't fancy. It wasn't in a wealthy neighborhood. But it had something more valuable than money. It had music. It had love. And it had Rosa. Rosa Martinez had been an exceptionally talented pianist. Born in 1940, she grew up in a time when doors were slammed shut in the faces of Latina women, no matter how talented they were. The prestigious conservatories didn't want her. The concert halls didn't want her. Not because she lacked talent, but because of the color of her skin, because of where she came from. So Rosa did something beautiful. She turned her own home into a musical sanctuary. She took that old upright piano and transformed it into a gateway to another world. And she taught Sandra everything she knew. "Music is a universal language, Sandra," Rosa would say, guiding her granddaughter's small fingers across the keys. "When you play from the heart, people listen with their soul, not their eyes. The world will try to tell you that certain things aren't for people like us. But music knows no color, knows no poverty, knows no limits. It only knows truth." For 8 blessed years, Sandra absorbed everything, not just how to play notes, but how to make music speak, how to tell stories with her fingers, how to pour her soul into every phrase, every pause, every delicate touch of the keys. Then Rosa died. Suddenly, a heart attack that took her away in an instant. And Sandra's world shattered. She entered the foster care system. She was separated from everything she knew. The piano was gone. Her home was gone. Her grandmother was gone. For 4 years, Sandra moved from shelter to shelter, from one temporary placement to another. But even though she couldn't touch a piano, the music never left her. At night, in cold dormitories, she would play imaginary keyboards, her fingers moving through the air, keeping the memory alive. But now, standing in this ballroom full of people who think they know her story just by looking at her, Sandra has a chance. And she's not going to let it slip away. Catherine, sensing an opportunity to assert her authority and provide some entertainment for her guests, decides to make Sandra an offer. But it's not an offer born from kindness. It's an offer designed to humiliate. "Very well, dear," Catherine announces loudly, making sure everyone can hear. "Since you insist so much, let's make a little deal. You can play one song, but we choose which one." She pauses dramatically. "If you play decently, I'll personally pay for a full dinner. But when you fail, as we all know you will, you leave immediately and never bother respectable people again." The crowd draws closer. They smell blood in the water. They're expecting a spectacle, a moment they can tell their friends about later. About the poor homeless girl who thought she could play piano. Catherine turns to Marcus Thompson, a mediocre pianist who plays in local bars. "Marcus, what should we have our young artist play?" Marcus smiles, and it's not a kind smile. "How about Beethoven's Für Elise? Everyone who's ever sat at a piano tries to play it. If she really knows anything, she should be able to handle it. Perfect. Für Elise. To most people, it's a beginner's piece. Something simple. But any real pianist knows the truth. To play it well requires refined technique, years of practice, perfect control. It's the perfect trap. If Sandra knows only the basics, she'll try and fail miserably. If she knows nothing, she won't even be able to start. Excellent choice, Catherine says, her voice full of fake enthusiasm and real cruelty. A song that any child who's had piano lessons knows. No excuses for failure. Sandra nods. Just once. I accept, she says, and her voice is clear as a bell. She walks toward the piano. Each step is measured, determined, and something about it makes a few people at the back of the room shift uncomfortably. There's something wrong with this picture. A 12-year-old child shouldn't carry this much dignity in the face of such humiliation. When Sandra reaches the piano bench, she does something that makes Dr. Chen's breath catch. She adjusts the bench height with precise, practiced movements. Not fumbling, not uncertain, like someone who's done it 1,000 times before. Dr. Chun leans forward. Those aren't the movements of a beginner. Those are the habits of someone trained from childhood. Look at that, Catherine sneers to her friends. She doesn't even know how to sit properly. But Dr. Chun knows better. The bench adjustment, the upright posture, the way Sandra's hands hover over the keys in perfect classical position, these are details that take years to master. Sandra takes a deep breath. In her mind, she can hear her grandmother's voice, as clear as if Rosa were standing right beside her. When people try to belittle you, let the music speak for you, my dear. Music doesn't lie, and it knows no prejudice. Her hands settle on the keys. After months without touching a real instrument, the feeling is electric, like rediscovering a lost part of her soul. And then she plays. The first note rings out through the ballroom. Crystalline, pure, perfect, and it's not what anyone expected. It's not hesitant. It's not the fumbling attempt of an amateur. It's confident. It's the sound of someone who knows this instrument intimately, who understands every nuance, every possibility. Several people look up in surprise. That note was played with impeccable technique. Precise attack, perfect sustain, controlled tone. Coincidence, Catherine murmurs, but her voice has lost some of its confidence. Sandra begins the main melody, and with each note that flows from her fingers, the atmosphere in the room changes. There's no hesitation, no technical errors. The music emerges naturally, as if she and the piano are one single organism. But there's something else, something that makes Dr. Chun move closer, his professional fascination completely aroused. It's not just that Sandra is playing the notes correctly. It's the way she phrases the melodic passages, the way she controls the dynamics, the way she lets the silence between notes speak as loudly as the music itself. This is the work of a mature artist, not an untrained child. The ballroom falls completely silent. Champagne glasses freeze in midair. Conversations die. Even the waiters stop moving. Everyone is mesmerized by this small figure at the piano, creating beauty that shouldn't be possible, that defies everything they thought they knew about the world. Catherine feels something growing in her stomach. Uneasiness. Panic. This isn't going according to plan. The public humiliation she orchestrated is transforming into something else. Something beyond her control. As Sandra plays, lost in the music that flows through her like a river, her fingers dancing across the keys with a familiarity that reveals hundreds, maybe thousands of hours of practice, one question begins to form in every mind in that room. Who is this girl? And what secrets is she about to reveal? Sandra's fingers continue their dance across the keys, and Dr. Marcus Chun can barely believe what he's witnessing. He's spent 40 years evaluating musical talent. For decades of listening to prodigies, to gifted students, to professionals. And what he's seeing right now, it defies all logic. The descending arpeggio passage, the part that trips up even advanced students, flows from Sandra's fingers like water over smooth stones. Crystal clear. Each note has weight. Each note has purpose. Each pause breathes with a kind of musicality that takes decades to develop. Dr. Chun watches, fascinated, as Sandra controls the sustaining pedal with the precision of a concert pianist. "This is impossible," he mutters to himself, moving even closer to the piano. Catherine, sensing the change in the room's atmosphere, feels those first alarm bells going off in her mind. The conversations have stopped completely. Even the waiters have abandoned their trays, mesmerized by what they're hearing. She needs to regain control of the narrative. Fast. She must have memorized this from some YouTube video, Catherine announces loudly, desperately. Kids these days can copy anything from the internet. But even as the words leave her mouth, they sound weak. Hollow. Because what Sandra is doing transcends imitation. This isn't copying. This is pure interpretation, loaded with emotional understanding that only comes from years of serious study. From lived experience. From pain and loss and love. Dr. Chun has seen countless prodigies in his career. 5-year-olds playing Mozart. Teenagers mastering Rachmaninoff. But he's rarely seen this combination of flawless technique and musical maturity in someone so young, especially under such unlikely circumstances. Sandra reaches the climax of the piece, where the main melody returns with renewed force after those virtuosic passages. Her hands dance across the keys with a familiarity that reveals not just hundreds, but thousands of hours of dedicated practice. You can't fake that level of intimacy with an instrument. You just can't. And as she plays, memories flow through the music like an underground river. Sandra can hear Grandmother Rosa's voice, echoing through the years. Music isn't about playing the right notes, my dear. It's about telling a story that only you can tell. Rosa had taught her that each composer had a unique language. Chopin spoke of longing. Beethoven spoke of struggle and triumph. Mozart spoke of crystalline joy. But more importantly, Rosa taught Sandra that her own musical voice was just as valuable. That her story mattered. That she mattered. When Rosa died and Sandra lost everything, she didn't just lose her grandmother. She lost her world. But even in the cold dormitories of shelters, even when she had nothing, she carried those melodies in her mind, playing imaginary keyboards, keeping the flame alive. Now, in this surreal moment at the Grand Plaza Hotel, it's all coming back. Every lesson, every gentle correction, every word of encouragement. It flows through her hands as if no time has passed at all. Dr. Chun watches as Sandra plays the final coda of the piece. The way she controls the dynamics, starting soft as a whisper and building to something majestic before returning to that delicate beginning, reveals a musical understanding that usually takes decades to develop. He leans toward his colleague, a piano professor at the local university. "Please tell me you're seeing this too," he whispers. "This child isn't just talented. She's a phenomenon." Victoria Sterling feels the ground shifting beneath her feet. Her carefully planned strategy to humiliate a vulnerable child is turning into the exact opposite of what she intended. Instead of confirming her prejudices, Sandra is forcing everyone in this room to question their most basic assumptions about class, about race, about merit, about worth. "It has to be a trick," Catherine murmurs to her friends, her voice getting more desperate. She must have had expensive private lessons somewhere. This can't be real. But even as she speaks, Catherine knows how weak her words sound. What Sandra is demonstrating isn't something money alone can buy. She's playing with soul, with lived history, with a depth that comes from places privilege can never reach. Sandra plays the final chords with such delicacy that several people in the audience hold their breath. When the last echo dies in the absolute silence of the ballroom, She keeps her hands suspended over the keys for just a moment longer, reluctant to break that magical connection between herself and the instrument. Then, slowly, she turns on the bench to face the crowd. The shy child who begged for food is gone. In her place sits a young artist who has just claimed her rightful place in the world through the universal language of music. Dr. Chun is the first to break the silence. His hands come together in applause that echoes through the hall like thunder. Gradually, others join in, until the entire Grand Plaza Hotel vibrates with applause. But it's not comfortable applause. It's confused, reluctant, the sound of people having their worldview challenged. Catherine looks around in growing panic. Her attempt at public humiliation has turned into a celebration of the very talent she tried to deny. Worse, she can see a question in the eyes of the other guests. A disturbing question. If we were so wrong about this child, what else are we wrong about? Sandra remains seated calm, allowing the applause to wash over her. But behind her eyes, something is forming. Not arrogance, but a growing understanding of her own power. Dr. Chun approaches the piano, his expression a mixture of admiration and professional curiosity. "Child," he says softly, "may I ask where you studied? Your teacher must be extraordinary." Sandra looks him straight in the eye. For just a moment, she allows all the pain of the last 4 years to show. "My grandmother taught me," she replies simply. "She said music was the one thing no one could take away from me." The answer hits Dr. Chun like lightning. Not an expensive conservatory. Not purchased privilege. Family love. Talent cultivated at home. Everything he believed about how musical excellence is created is being challenged by this 12-year-old girl. "Your full name?" Dr. Chun asks, his voice trembling. "Sandra Martinez." Dr. Chun takes a step back. His eyes widen. His hand comes up to cover his mouth. "Rosa Martinez," he whispers. "Are you Rosa Martinez's granddaughter?" Sandra nods silently. "My God." Dr. Chun covers his face with his hands. Rosa Martinez was one of the greatest pianists this country ever produced. She should have played at the best conservatories in the world, in the finest concert halls, but his voice breaks with the weight of historical injustice. Catherine watches the exchange with mounting dread. "Marcus, what are you talking about? Who is Rosa Martinez?" Dr. Chun turns to her, and the look on his face is a mixture of disbelief and disgust. "Catherine, Rosa Martinez was a legend in the music community. A virtuoso who was systematically excluded from conservatories and concert halls because of her ethnicity. She became one of the most respected private teachers in the country, training dozens of professional musicians. The crowd murmurs. Some recognize the name from their own musical backgrounds. Pieces are clicking into place. But that was decades ago," Catherine says defensively, her voice getting shrill. "And even if that's true, it doesn't change the fact that she's homeless, begging at a private event." And that's when Sandra rises from the piano bench. For the first time that evening, she allows her true personality to emerge completely. The submissive posture vanishes. In its place is an unshakable dignity that makes several people in the room actually step back. "Ms. Montgomery," Sandra says, her voice clear and firm, "you're right about one thing. I shouldn't be here tonight." She pauses, lets the silence settle like dust. "I should be at Carnegie Hall in New York, where I have a recital scheduled for next week." A deathly silence falls over the room. Catherine feels like the floor is disappearing beneath her feet. "My name is Sandra Martinez," Sandra continues, "and I am the youngest classical pianist ever accepted into the Juilliard School's Young Artists program. I am also the current national champion of classical piano for the under-15 category." She pauses again, letting that information sink into every shocked mind in the room. Dr. Chen's eyes widen as understanding floods through him. "The documentary," he murmurs. You're making the documentary. Sandra nods. Exactly. I'm collaborating with PBS on a documentary about prejudice and access to the arts. My producer suggested I attend charity events for arts education disguised as a young person without resources, to document how privileged people really treat those they consider inferior. The revelation falls on the room like a bomb. Catherine's face goes white. You're filming us? Hidden cameras, Sandra confirms calmly. High-definition audio and video. Everything that happened here tonight has been documented for national broadcast. Catherine looks around desperately, searching for cameras, for any sign this is a cruel joke. That's illegal. You can't film us without consent. Actually, Dr. Chen interjects, and there's dark satisfaction in his voice. You signed image releases when you entered. It's written quite clearly on the tickets that this event could be filmed for documentary purposes. He smiles without warmth. I'm sure no one read the fine print. The crowd begins to stir. People are pulling out their phones, frantically checking their tickets. The panic is palpable. Real. You can almost smell it in the air. The first part of the documentary, Sandra continues, ignoring the growing chaos, will focus on how talent and potential are overlooked when they come packaged in appearances that defy privileged expectations. The second part will show how people who claim to be defenders of the arts react when confronted with real art from unexpected sources. Dr. Chen approaches Sandra with deep respect. May I ask what you intend to do with this recording? The documentary will air nationally next month, Sandra explains. But I've also created a YouTube channel where I post shorter versions of these experiments. My latest video, filmed at a similar event in Boston, currently has 2.5 million views. The horror on the faces around the room is almost comical. In a matter of days, their cruelty will be seen by millions. Their names will be associated forever with the kind of prejudice they just demonstrated. Ms. Montgomery, Sandra says, addressing Catherine directly, you spent this entire evening telling me that people like me don't deserve to be in places like this. That we have no value, no talent, no right to participate in high culture. Her voice gains strength that silences the entire hall. Tomorrow, the whole world will see exactly what kind of person you really are. Catherine tries to speak, but no words come out. The magnitude of what's about to happen is simply too big to process. Dr. Chen looks around, seeing panic on every face. How many other events have you filmed? This is the 12th, Sandra replies. And it's always the same. People who claim to value art and education, but immediately judge and dismiss talent based solely on appearances. She turns to face Catherine one last time. The difference between you and me, Ms. Montgomery, is that when I was actually homeless after my grandmother's death, I learned that dignity doesn't come from money or status. It comes from how we treat other human beings when we think no one is watching. The silence is deafening. Every person in that ballroom knows their words and actions will be judged by millions of strangers. And most know there's no possible defense for what they demonstrated tonight. 6 months pass. Catherine Montgomery stands at the window of her small apartment, watching as a limousine pulls up in front of Carnegie Hall. Sandra Martinez steps out, wearing an elegant concert gown, waving to fans before entering the theater, where she'll make her debut as the youngest soloist of the season. The documentary, Faces of Discrimination, went viral. Over 15 million views on YouTube alone. Catherine became a national symbol of elitist hypocrisy. She lost her position in every charitable organization, lost the respect of the high society she valued more than anything. Her luxury events company lost all its important clients. Now she works as an assistant at a small law firm, trying to rebuild a reputation that may never fully recover. Meanwhile, Dr. Chun became Sandra's official mentor, helping her navigate the world of professional classical music. The Grand Plaza Hotel, embarrassed by the public exposure, created a scholarship program for underprivileged young musicians. They named Sandra as its official ambassador. "Music knows no color, social class, or zip code," Sandra said in her first national interview. "It only knows truth and passion. And when you have both, no barrier can stop you." But the impact went far beyond one documentary. Music schools across the country started community outreach programs. Conservatories revised their admissions processes. Hundreds of talented young people from underprivileged communities received opportunities that had been denied to them before. Catherine, watching Sandra triumph where she herself tried to humiliate her, finally understood the most painful lesson of her life. Dignity and talent cannot be bought with money, cannot be inherited with surnames, and definitely cannot be measured by the color of someone's skin or the address where they come from. Sandra's best revenge wasn't to destroy Catherine. It was to prove that true greatness transcends prejudice. That sometimes, the people we least expect carry the most extraordinary gifts. And on that night, when a small voice asked, "May I play for food?" in a ballroom full of privilege and pride, one brave 12-year-old girl didn't just play a piano. She changed the world.